Hello and welcome to Talk to Stu with me, Stuart Magoo. And thank you for joining me for another one of my frequently asked questions videos. This is number 4 in the series, and in this video we are going to be answering the question, how do I lodge a mandatory reconsideration or appeal? I will say most people don't use the word lodge, that's my own word. But anyway, if this sort of video is useful to you, please like, share and subscribe, because I do a lot of videos like these on benefits and health and all those kind of difficult things that crop up in between. And of course, click the notification bell if you want to be kept up to date of when I do my live Q&A sessions. Now, generally speaking, they're supposed to be on the first Tuesday of the month, Tuesday. And if you can join us for that, you can ask any questions that are on your mind to do with benefits or health. I cover lots of things, not actual physical health, but dealing with the health services and health and social care sector as well. So please join us for those if that would be helpful to you. Okay, so let's get into it. So you've applied for a disability benefit. It could be children's DLA, it could be personal independence payment, it could be attendance allowance. Those are the main three. And it could even be that your decision has been made for your either employment support allowance, capability for work assessment, or it could be the similar thing that's under universal credit, which is called universal credit sickness benefit or sickness element. So you will have received a decision that you're not happy with, and it might be that you are thinking to yourself that that's fine, they've made that decision, obviously I'm not eligible, it's fine. That's fine if you genuinely don't think you are eligible, but do think about it, because often a lot of people get put off at this point because they think, it's quite a stressful process to go through a mandatory reconsideration or appeal, so that might be part of it. But also it might be that they're thinking, well, maybe I'm not, as bad as I think I am, or that there's people worse out there than me. And, that's probably true. But at the same time, it's probably true that there might be people worse off than you, but it might be that you're not viewing your health and disability in the way that you should. Often we try not to think of ourselves as being as bad as we are, or as affected as we are, is a better way of putting it. So that can put us off. So when you get that, if you're not sure, if you're not happy with it, talk about it with somebody. Ask them, do they think that's right? Somebody trusted, of course, somebody close to you, or a professional in that situation. Most medical professionals, even if they're not doctors, will have come across people that have been eligible for these sort of things before, and they will have an idea of whether or not you should be eligible too, based on your health conditions and how they affect you. So that's the first thing. So, just because it says no, don't automatically assume that they're right, is what I'm saying. They may not be. They might have made the wrong decision. Of course, if it is that you're feeling quite stressed or anxious about the process and what's involved, and you've thought to yourself, well, I've heard it's quite stressful, and I'm not going to lie to you, it can be, that might be putting you off as well. But that really shouldn't. You really should fight for what you're eligible for if you believe these people have made a mistake in making the decision. I think that's perfectly reasonable, and it's also just to do so. Obviously, if you, if you're the kind of person who is egging the bread, then I'm not suggesting that you should be doing that. But if you are genuine, and the majority of people who go to mandatory reconsideration, and I mean a huge majority of people, are genuine, so have a think about that and do push on with it. There are elements to it which seem really scary and really stressful that actually are much less scary and stressful than you think they are going to be. The final decision, and when it comes to that, that's really where the stress comes into it, and also having to go through the whole process of doing everything and then being on tenterhooks waiting to find out. That can also be stressful as well. So think about your mental health as well. You've got to make the decision for yourself. I can't tell you whether that's the right thing to do or not. You can only judge that for yourself, and again, talk to people around you. Is it worth doing it? Is it worth going through that stress? I think most of the time it probably is, but you've got to make that decision for yourself. But be assured by the statistics, statistically speaking, over 64% of people that go to appeal are successful. And indeed, well over 50% of people who apply for mandatory reconsideration then are awarded something in the benefit, and usually the right amount. So, what is the actual process? Well, the first thing to do is to request mandatory reconsideration, and this can be done in two ways. The first way is doing it over the phone, and the second way is writing a letter to them. Now, there is talk about rolling out an online system that will make it easier to do, and if you are on universal credit, then you may use your journal to request mandatory reconsideration as well, but that's kind of like writing a letter, so sort of put it in the same category for now. So if you are going to phone up and request mandatory reconsideration, you'll be asked the question on the phone, what are your reasons for requesting mandatory reconsideration, or is there anything else that you want to add, something along those lines. And it's best that you be prepared for that answer. So the process for either phoning that I'm going to suggest that you take before phoning them up is the same for writing a letter, and it's preparation. This is absolutely key. So the first thing you should do is hopefully you've got a copy of your original application that you sent off, and you may even have a copy of the telephone call interview that you had, or face-to-face interview if they did a digital audio recording at the time. Maybe you also had somebody go with you that was supporting you if you did a face-to-face one, or it might have been a video call. Sometimes those happen, and again, there may be a recording available of that. So do try and get hold of as much as you can to remind you of everything that you said and what was written down in your first application and what was discussed when you were doing the telephone assessment. It's always good, if you're doing the telephone assessment, if you're able to have somebody with you, not necessarily to speak for you or anything like that when you're on the phone, but just to have a sort of second opinion about what was said and discussed and things like that. It's also good for moral support. Anyway, when you have got all those bits of information together, also have a think about any extra medical evidence or medical information that you could get together. Maybe it might be a diary of how your conditions affect you on a daily basis. Maybe it would be a statement from somebody who knows you, who provides care and support to you, a family member or a friend. Maybe it's a medical professional or some sort of support worker that works with you quite regularly and might be able to, write in support of your application. for mandatory reconsideration. So it could be any of those things. It might, of course, be medical reports. It could be letters from doctors, anything like that. It might be that you've had some tests or something in the interim between when you submitted your application and when the decision was made, so you may have more evidence that you can add in that way. Generally speaking, they say don't send in photographic evidence, but on occasion some photographs can be quite helpful if they show a very specific piece of equipment that you're using in situ, in where it is in the house. Maybe it's the bathroom, maybe it might be a specific type of injury that you've got if that's been missed in some way, but try not to be sending things that are too graphic to people, as that generally isn't necessary. Generally words will do. So then you need to get hold of your decision letter. In that you will have a list of the points awarded, and you will also have a decision, particularly if it's personal independence payment, which is written out as the reasons why they came to the decision that they did. Now, for quite some time the decision was quite detailed. Then we started seeing letters going out where it was just, we made this decision and we made it because we made it, and that's pretty much all that was written there, and it didn't really tell you anything. And then I started seeing that they're getting a bit more detailed again, depending on the level of detail that's in there about how they made the decision. That could also be useful to you. Once you've got those, also download yourself the descriptors off Tinternet, and this will give you an indication of how many points would be awarded for you demonstrating a certain thing within your application. They're quite useful. I'll put a link to them in the comments as well. So yes, go through, and that's for PIP. For employment support allowance or universal credit work capability, that's quite different. There are descriptors for that, but it's looked at in a very different way, so that may not be helpful. And for attendance allowance or children's DLA, descriptors don't really come into it. It's just about the argument, or the way you put your argument. So, as I say, go through those descriptors, look at each question, look at what points you were awarded, and think about, is that right? Was that the right level that was awarded to you? So, for example, you might have 0 points on the getting dressed and undressed, but you know for yourself that you have to use a physical device to help you get your trousers on or something like that. So that would score you 2 points. So if you're able to say, well, you said this in your decision and you awarded 0 points for this, but actually I used this, and here's a photo of it, and here's my physiotherapist saying, occupational therapist saying that they had to issue it for me and can't put on my trousers without it. So that in and of itself is 2 points. So it's going through and putting those things in there. Put down the number of points that you think you should have been awarded. That's absolutely fine. Also look at the decision maker's decision as well. Quite often they'll talk more about the telephone or face-to-face assessment that was done than they will the actual form and what was written down in the first place. And that's sort of quite often where the focus of their attention is in those decisions. So go through that, look for any incongruences or things that did not happen as is written by the decision maker. Quite often they seem to have memory lapses as to what conversation was actually had on the phone. That's, of course, if you've got a recording where that comes into being quite useful, because equally we can have memories of the way we thought things went, and then we can listen back to it. And it's always a bit weird to listen to your own voice at first. I mean, if you're like me, you get used to it and you often enjoy the sound of it. But if you're a normal person, you'll be thinking, oh God, I don't listen to myself. But even so, it can be really useful to know exactly what you said and exactly what they said. Quite often I've spoken to people and they've said, when they were asked a question about something, they were asked a fairly closed question, and when that person said, well, yes, but, they say, no, that's fine, they didn't want to hear what the but was. Things like that. So really think about that and really draw attention to those things. Write all that down. If he said this and you think that was wrong, then say so. Make sure you jot all these notes down. Keep them as brief as possible, but accurate and concise, I think is the word. Make sure that you bullet point it or number it if that makes it easier for you as well. As you're going through the decision maker's decision, you'll find that it's a bit of a jumble of words. Don't be afraid to go through and underline things. Take a copy if you don't want to do that to the original. Highlight things, number things, whatever, and make sure you get every point. So then the next stage comes where you either phone them up and tell them all this over the phone, or you write it all down in a letter. Now, my preferred way is to do that in a letter, but it may be that you don't have access to those kind of equipment, such as, laptops and printers and whatnot, or handwriting isn't an option for you, something like that. Doing it over the phone would be the better way to do it. But if you can do it in a letter, I think that's a better way to do it for me, because then I've got a paper trail. I can know exactly what I said. I can take my time over it. I can be very specific. And also when I send it off, I can include all that extra evidence. Not that you can't when you do the phone call, you just have to send it in separately. When you've done all of this, even if you don't put it as a letter, but if you've written it out as a letter, get somebody to read over it and just check everything. You might have missed things. They might pick things up and say, oh, you didn't tell them about this, or you didn't talk about how that affects you, or something like that. Always good to have somebody look over it. Also good to check spelling and grammar and things like that as well. Helpful generally, and then send that off. Now, you've done loads of work just for this mandatory reconsideration and sent it off. Why have I made you do all this work? You could just phone up and say, can I have mandatory reconsideration? They say, yeah, okay, and have a look at it again. That way is usually the least successful way of doing it, I have to say. But this pays off later on, because if you get the decision back and it's still not the right decision, you've done all of the hard work before it comes to writing out your appeal. So, how do you do an appeal? Well, there's a couple of different ways of doing it. The first thing you'll need to do, ideally, is go to www.gov.uk/appeal-benefit-decision, and you will be able to access it. And as always, I'll put a link in the description so you don't have to type all that out if you don't want to, or whatever. So you go to there and you can do one of two things. You can either submit your appeal online, which is pretty easy to do, to be fair. It's an electronic form and it works in exactly the same way as the paper form, which is also available there to download. Now, there are different forms to download, so do check that you are downloading the right form. So, if you are appealing a benefits decision, then you use form SSCS1, which is the top of the list. If you're appealing child maintenance, HMRC decision, or a decision about vaccine damage, that's the thing apparently, you can download one of those forms from there as well. But we're just interested in the SSCS1 form. So this is very much the same in paper as it is on the digital form. And it's a relatively simple form to fill out, first of all. So you, generally speaking, fill in your name and address and all those kind of details, your email address, phone number, all of that kind of thing, and then you tick the box as to which appeal you are looking to do. Is it personal independence payment, employment support allowance, universal credit, or other? And it says please specify. So they will want your mandatory reconsideration notice or your decision notice after your mandatory reconsideration. So you'll need to put that in there as well. I suggest sending a copy rather than the original document, or send the original document and keep the copy, whichever you prefer, as long as you've got a copy. It will also ask you to put in the date that is written on your mandatory reconsideration letter, and if you are over 1 month from that date, you can then explain why your appeal is late. If you've got a good reason, such as you were in hospital receiving treatment, for example, or something like that where you absolutely could not have done it, or maybe also you were waiting for support from your representative or advocate, something like that, then it might be that they would, to a certain extent, grant a bit of an extension if you've been sat on a waiting list. So it might be that you haven't yet received a mandatory reconsideration notice. So if you haven't at that point received it for whatever reason, or you don't have a copy of that for some reason, you can request one from the DWP and they will send you a new copy. There is a space on here for you to explain why you're doing that before getting a mandatory reconsideration notice. So then you've got two sections coming up. So if you're appealing on behalf of a child or you're an appointee, then you fill in the next section. If you're just appealing for yourself, you skip this next section. If you're an appointee by the or officially appointed by the DWP to deal with somebody's benefit claims for them, or you are the parent of a child or the guardian of a child that you're representing, you would fill in this next section, which is again, first name, last name, date of birth, national insurance number, and the address of the person that you are doing that for. It also, does it ask for their national insurance number? Yes, it does. I did say that. And then section 4 is for your representative, if you have one. So that's where you would fill in all their details, and you, of course, can ask for that person to receive text message updates there as well. Then you set out the reasons for your appeal on section 5. There's a average size box to be filled in there, but we'll come back to section 5 in a minute. Then there's a notice on there saying that you need to include evidence and that you should send that in as early as possible in your appeal. So that doesn't mean you have to send it in with this. You can send it in afterwards, but you need to get it in as soon as possible, because if you send it too late, of course you've got no idea when that's going to be, but it might be not included. Any evidence that you've sent to the DWP will be sent over to the tribunal as well, and it will also be shared with your representative too. Now, here's a really important part, is your appeal hearing. Now, a lot of people have a lot of worries about this next question. So the appeal's decided by the tribunal using the information in the form and any additional evidence you provide. Information and evidence submitted by the DWP will also be considered. If you wish, you can also explain your reasons for appealing by taking part in the hearing by telephone, video, or face-to-face. The tribunal can arrange support at your hearing, such as an interpreter, hearing loop, or disabled access. So here you would decide whether you want to take part in the hearing or whether you don't want to take part in the hearing. Now, there are some statistics out there that suggest that if you don't take part in the hearing, you're less likely to be successful. I'm not sure about that myself. I think it's about how well you've prepared and how much evidence you've put in. And indeed, taking part in the hearing can be a very stressful thing to do, even if you are doing that from home, over the telephone, or video. It might be that you're asked to appear face-to-face at a tribunal court. If you do, generally speaking, the people who run the courts and are there on the day and will help you with your disabled access needs, or providing an interpreter, things like that. All those people are really quite kind and nice. Generally, most people have a positive experience of them. Quite often hearings tend to be fairly quick. Generally they've got a lot to get through during the day, and they may only want to ask you one or two specific questions on certain points. If you go, it can be of benefit to you to go, because if you have a visible physical disability, then that will help for them to see you like that. But of course, that may help. That may happen if you do a video call as well. They usually will get in touch with you to tell you which way they will prefer you to do it. So it's important at this point that you get across, if you do want to do if you want to take part in the hearing, what your best way of taking part is. Now, of course, if you choose not to take part in the hearing, that does ease a bit of pressure on you. It's just a case of waiting to find out, and you'll receive a letter telling you what the decision was in due course. Generally speaking, if you've done enough preparation, put enough evidence in there, and you did in the first place, and you've made a really good argument here, then I think not taking part in the hearing is fine, and that's the option I usually go for with the people that I've supported in the past for that. So then, as I say, indicate which preference you would have, whether it would be over telephone, video, or face-to-face, and then what support you would need at your hearing, if any, and your availability for the hearing. You then have to fill in, and there's a little calendar, and you just indicate potential days, or in fact days that you cannot attend. So indicate those on the calendar, and that's to be within 3 to 8 months in the future, which is also an indication of when it will take place. Any time between 3 and 8 months, closer to 8 than 3 normally. And then of course you sign and date and pop that in the post, and the addresses are on there. So let's go back to section 5, which is the reasons for your appeal. So what we're trying to do here is make it very clear what the DWP have made a mistake with, what errors that they've made. So all the preparation that you will have done for your mandatory reconsideration will come in useful here. Now, you must provide at least one reason why. So it can't just be because they're wrong, because that's not a reason. That's the appeal. The filling in the form, I mean. So what you need to do is say, well, why do you think they're wrong? So again, bullet points are often best with this. You can go onto multiple sheets of paper, you can have it written separately and just write in this box, please see attached documents, really however you want it to be. Be as succinct as possible, but make sure you get in all the detail where it's necessary. Don't be afraid to write a bit more if you think that will be of benefit. If you are providing extra evidence, or in the form of maybe a diary, as I mentioned earlier, things like that, then do indicate on each piece of paper that you include with it, your name and your national insurance number, and also what these documents are. And even maybe put in a list, if you're sending in a lot of documents, a list with the table of contents on the front. That will really help as well, so that the people looking at it can go through and quickly reference the bits that they need to. The easier you make their job, the better it is going to be for you in the long run, because that will mean that the decision gets made quicker. Now for you, it might be you won't know that it's made quicker necessarily. It might be the difference of a week, but as you don't really get told, you won't know that. But it does help expedite things if you're able to do so. So as I say, put all of that in together and post it off. Now it works pretty much the same way in the online form. It takes you through each section one by one. You get asked all the same questions, and you get the opportunity to add your reasons for your decision and upload documents as well in the same way. So it really is whatever works best for you. And as I've said before, get support if you can. Use the Turn to Us advice finder that I'll pop in the description. So yeah, hope all this was helpful to you in how to do a mandatory reconsideration and appeal. If it was, as always, like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell, all that sort of stuff. And yeah, best of luck with doing it. Don't be put off, and don't be scared of doing it. There is support available out there. Do seek it out. And as I say, if you're going through hell, just keep going. The alternative is worse. Just fight the good fight. Fight for yourself, even if no one else will, because you're worth it, as they say in L'Oreal. As you can see, I use L'Oreal. I'm not advertising L'Oreal. Other hair products are available. Anyway, that's enough from me. Thanks for watching, and yeah, hope to see you all again soon. Take good care of yourselves. Bye.